This is part 3 on Earth's catastrophe cycle, taking a look at the present time and asking just one simple question. By now many of you have heard about the 21 trillion that is untraceable in the US government. The culprits are the Department of Defense and HUD, housing. The question, of course, is where did the money come from and where did it go? In this case, did some of it go to preparation for Earth's catastrophe? It's been 1 year since we learned the 21 trillion went unaccounted for, and here is what we know now. It turns out that to call the $21 trillion missing isn't really accurate. It's not a one-way deal. There is 21 trillion in untraceable accounting events, both in and out. So some of the mystery involved money that came in, which admittedly sounds better than mysteriously going out, but still, where did it come from? And since they aren't running at a surplus, at the very best, we have 10.5 trillion mysteriously coming into the situation and 10.5 trillion going out. Now, in the last year, the Pentagon underwent an audit and failed, and I read about everything there is on this since then, and it's clear that the scales are probably significantly tipped towards the money going out, although I was admittedly more puzzled by the money coming in from out of nowhere, hundreds of billions coming out of thin air. There's absolutely no accounting for those monies. Some is undoubtedly depreciation and pension and closed assets, things like that, but those numbers are almost certainly below 1 trillion. And furthermore, why is HUD involved? That's a lot of housing. Where is it being built? The director of our plasma lab, Billy Yelverton, said it very poignantly. That money wasn't spent on the surface of Earth. We'd see it. There is, of course, one exception, if it's in Antarctica, the place that would no longer be an uninhabitable frozen hell. But in truth, that much money does indeed lend one to think about above and below, outer space and deep Earth. Because the money is not only not evident in the infrastructure we see around the planet, but also it's not in the economy, as was discussed on the Suspect Sky roundtable. Inflation would be through the roof, and so the money did not enter the economy as we know it. This leaves space, Antarctica, and underground, and almost entirely outside the normal economy. And then there is the problem of HUD's involvement. One would love to be optimistic and speculate that the housing is underground and for everyone they're going to try to save if such a catastrophe occurs. One hopes it wouldn't be something like an off-world sanctuary for the rich. If it is, I'm hoping the sun gives them all she's got. Just thinking about Douglas Vogt and the recurring micronova possibility, Mars and the moon aren't going to cut it if you're not 1,000% sure it's not the sun. Unless you are sure it's not the sun, a secret space colony would have to be just past Jupiter or Saturn. We mentioned in episode 1, Pikes Peak, mentioned as a safe zone by the classified Chan work, is basically connected to Cheyenne Mountain next door. The roads into the mountain, like NORAD Road, are not really all that a secret. It is a known megabase existing inside the mountain. But then there are the stories of what's beneath Denver Airport, just up the road from Colorado Springs, and ever since I've lived in New Mexico, I've heard of stories of secret places around this state, many of which also underground. But these are things that many people know about, and whether or not you know it, we're consistently 10, 20, maybe 30 years behind the technological state in secret. Who knows what they have done underground? We don't even know what we don't know. That sentiment in hand, the same could be said for Earth's catastrophe cycle itself. While the evidence for a cycle of disaster exists, how long the cycle is exactly, how much longer do we have? In what form will the disaster come and just how bad will it be? These are open questions. If you remember episode 1, that seemed pretty extreme, almost unsurvivable, and we are all here today because someone survived it last time. As an example of why the classified work might be a bit extreme, yes, the equator rotates at 1,000 miles an hour, which is the stated speed that the wind would rip across the planet from that first classified work. But remember, that's only the equator, and that would require a full, immediate stop to be realized at that speed in the catastrophe, and the same goes for the oceans, getting a little bit less scary the further away you get from the equator. Now I'll leave you with this in anticipation of the next episode on possibly the worst case scenario. This cataclysm, if cyclical, would have to be the sort that hits a very narrow sweet spot between total world annihilation and a globally relevant catastrophe that does not kill everyone and leaves some behind to tell the stories. That is a narrow sweet spot indeed. Until next time, eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.